You've been fighting these plants for years, pulling them, spraying them, trying to get rid of them. Meanwhile, they've been outgrowing, outlasting, and quietly out-nutrienting everything in your garden. And the worst part? You probably pulled one out this morning. I'm not talking about some exotic plant you've never heard of. I'm talking about the stuff growing in your lawn right now, in the cracks of your driveway, along your garden border, the stuff you've been treating like a problem. Turns out, it's not a problem. It's a food system. A better one than most people are actually growing. And by the end of this video, you're going to feel genuinely stupid for how long you've been destroying it. We're going through 5 of them, one at a time. And I'm starting with number 5, which is probably the one you've been poisoning the most. So let me ask you something. How much did you spend on your garden this season? Seeds, soil, fertilizer, maybe a few transplants from the nursery. Now think about the plants you've been trying to kill in that same garden. Nothing spent, nothing planted, no watering, no care, just there, every year, without fail. That gap between what you're spending and what's already growing for free, that's what this video is actually about. Because I used to be the guy who'd spend a Saturday afternoon on his knees pulling weeds out of the beds, proud of a clean rows, neat rows, everything labeled. And right outside the bed, 3 feet away, stuff was growing that I was literally paying herbicide money to remove. Brilliant. It wasn't until I actually looked into what some of these plants were, like actually looked, that I realized what I've been doing. If you're into this kind of thing, growing food, cutting costs, the stuff most garden channels don't bother with, go ahead and subscribe. I post when something's actually worth talking about. All right, number 5. Dandelion. Yeah, that one. The one with the yellow flower that turns into the white clock your kids blow on. The one you've probably sprayed more times than you can count. Here's something that genuinely stopped me when I first read it. European settlers brought dandelion to North America deliberately. They packed it on the boat, carried it across the ocean on purpose as a food crop. Let that sit for a second. A plant that now gets Roundup dumped on it every spring was once considered valuable enough to transport across an ocean. And when you look at the numbers, it makes sense. A handful of dandelion greens, about 100 grams, contains 558% of your daily vitamin K, more beta-carotene than a carrot, more calcium per calorie than a glass of milk. And every single part of it is edible. The leaves, in early spring before they get bitter, taste decent raw in a salad. The flowers you can eat straight or batter and fry them. People do that. It's not weird. The root, roasted and ground, works as a coffee substitute. Dried, it's a liver-supporting herbal remedy that sells for $12 a bag at health food stores. $12! For a root you've been yanking out of the ground and binning. But here's the thing that makes dandelion genuinely impressive from a practical standpoint. Compare it to spinach. Spinach, beloved, celebrated in every superfood list ever written, needs prepared soil, regular water, protection from heat, replanting every single season. Dandelion needs nothing. It breaks through compacted soil, survives frost, produces from April through October. The taproot goes 18 inches deep. You literally cannot kill it without chemicals. Which, now that I think about it, is exactly why we've been trying so hard to get rid of it. Now, dandelion is mostly vitamins. Impressive ones, but mostly vitamins. What comes next is the one that fills the gap that almost every garden has, the one thing most people don't even think about growing. Number 4. Most people see this and think some kind of succulent snuck into their garden bed. Low-growing, thick little leaves, almost waxy looking. They pull it out and toss it on the compost heap without a second thought. What they just threw away is one of the most complete edible plants on the planet. This is Purslane. And here's the thing about Purslane that genuinely surprised me when I found out. It's the only land plant that gives you omega-3 fatty acids in meaningful amounts, 300 to 400 milligrams per 100 gram serving. Most people spend $20, $30 a month on fish oil supplements to hit that number. Purslane gives it to you for free, from your garden bed. And it'll grow back next week without you doing a single thing. But what makes Purslane actually remarkable, beyond the omega-3s, is when it grows. It's a C4 photosynthesis plant, which basically means it thrives in the conditions that kill everything else: drought, heat, poor soil, full neglect. Think about August in your garden. Tomatoes wilting, lettuce bolted and bitter, half your bed looking sorry for itself. Purslane? Peak growth, happiest it's ever been. It wants the conditions that stress every other plant you're growing. Taste-wise? Mild, slightly lemony, works raw in salads, sautéed in soups. In Turkey and Greece, it's been a cultivated crop for centuries. In the Middle East, it's treated as a delicacy. In your garden, it's currently in the compost bin. All right, Purslane covers the supplement gap, the omega-3 gap, but what about protein? Because that's always the argument against foraged and wild food. You can't get enough protein. Number 3 disagrees. You've seen this one. Pale green leaves, powdery white coating on the new growth, almost like someone dusted it with flour. Grows to waist height in any disturbed soil like it has somewhere to be. Looks completely inedible, looks like a weed in the most boring, uninteresting sense of the word. It was one of the most important food plants in pre-agricultural North America. Native American tribes across the continent cultivated lamb's quarters intentionally, harvested the leaves, harvested the seeds tiny, black, similar to quinoa because lamb's quarters and quinoa are in the same plant family. Those seeds can be dried, ground into flour, or cooked whole like a grain. One mature plant produces tens of thousands of seeds in a single season. The leaves, 4.2 grams of protein per 100 grams raw, more than spinach. Plus iron, calcium, vitamins A and C. Cook them exactly like spinach. They wilt the same way. Taste mild, slightly earthy, actually more tender than most cultivated greens. And here's the detail that gets me every time I think about it. If you've been building raised beds, amending soil, digging, turning it over, lamb's quarters is almost certainly already colonizing the border. 3 feet from your carefully planted spinach, you're spending money on spinach seeds, preparing soil, managing pests, replanting every season, the lamb's quarters growing right next to that bed. Free, self-seeding, permanent, better protein. I don't know whether to laugh or just feel bad about the spinach money. Okay, so far everything on this list feeds you. Vitamins, omega-3s, protein. But the next 2, these ones don't just feed you, they do something else. Something that no vegetable in your raised bed can do. Number 2 first. Clover. Red or white, doesn't matter much for this conversation. Most people mow it, some people pull it, almost nobody thinks of it as a crop. But clover is a nitrogen-fixing legume, which means, and this is the part that should genuinely change how you think about your lawn, its root system hosts bacteria that pull nitrogen directly out of the atmosphere and deposit it into the soil. Not from a bag, not from a bottle, from the air. Before synthetic fertilizers existed, farmers planted clover specifically to restore depleted fields. It was a deliberate crop, a valuable one. Then synthetic nitrogen came along, made it unnecessary, and we started treating it like a weed. So right now, if you've got clover in your lawn, it is actively improving your soil every single season without you doing anything. But the edible side of clover is better than most people realize too. Young leaves, edible raw, mildly grassy, best in small amounts. The flowers, both red and white, edible raw or dried. Red clover flowers specifically have been used in herbal medicine for decades. Dried, they sell for $8 to $15 per ounce at herbal retailers. Per ounce! You can harvest them from your lawn for free. And the seeds, tiny, numerous, can be sprouted indoors through winter for fresh greens when nothing else is growing outside, ready in 4 days. Have you ever actually let clover just grow? Most people haven't. Drop a comment if you have. Genuinely curious what you've noticed. Clover feeds you, fixes you soil, costs nothing. But everything on this list, as good as it is, gets outdone by number 1. Because number 1 does something none of the others can. It produces food before your garden even starts, before your seeds have germinated, before your raised beds have thawed. February, maybe early March. Your garden is still dead. Ground still cold, nothing planted yet. And there, in a dense little mat along the border, small sprawling plant, tiny white star-shaped flowers, already growing. This is chickweed, and the timing is the whole point. In any food security situation, and I mean actual shortage, not just a bad harvest, the most dangerous window is late winter into early spring. That gap between whatever you had stored running low and the first real harvest arriving. Chickweed fills that gap. It grows when nothing else will, produces dense edible material, needs zero inputs, and it tastes actually good. Mild, slightly grassy, texture like baby spinach, not edible if you're desperate. Actually good. Nutritionally, vitamin C, calcium, magnesium, iron, historically used as a poultice for skin irritation and inflammation, which sounds like folk nonsense until you find out it's backed by actual documented anti-inflammatory properties. And here's the thing about chickweed that makes it almost unfair compared to everything else on this list. It doesn't compete with your summer crops. It grows in the dead space, the calendar gap that no cultivated plant can reach. By the time your tomatoes need that ground, chickweed is already dying back on its own. One plant produces 800 seeds. Those seeds stay viable in soil for up to 10 years. Once chickweed finds your garden, it's part of your garden. Fresh greens every late winter, for as long as you grow food on that land, without doing anything. Step back and look at what we've actually got here. 5 plants. Not one of them costs money. Not one needs seeds, prepared soil, irrigation, or any special knowledge beyond being able to recognize them. Together, omega-3s, vitamin C, protein, calcium, iron, nitrogen fertility, early spring greens, summer abundance, medicine. The average household spends over $500 a year on lawn care. A chunk of that money goes directly toward killing exactly these plants. We're paying to destroy a free food system that has been trying to establish itself in our yards for decades. And the real irony, the food system we're protecting our lawns for, the one that needs seeds, fertilizer, irrigation, and perfect soil, that's the fragile one. That's the one that can fail. The weeds? They've survived every drought, every ice age, every agricultural shift in history. They'll be here long after whatever we're carefully tending has come and gone. The question was never whether these plants could feed you. They already can. The question is just whether you'll stop killing them long enough to find out. All right, 5 weeds. All free, all probably already in your garden right now. If there's one on this list you've actually eaten before, drop it in the comments. Curious which one people already know about without realizing it. Now, go look at your lawn differently.